So this is part 2. I just wanted to state also that we're doing these videos because nobody else is. This is your only source to get a complete Erectology study every single week.
And hopefully it's a blessing.
As what Eric says, for what it's worth.
So we're talking about looking at what is worship, or how does worship work, going through the alphabetic letter sequence. And if the act of worshiping, getting you as the tool in the hand that he gave us to, somebody's taken off. Can't who see that is. See you next week. To being in a heart of worship acts as the drawbridge down to cross over the moat, the Zion that's keeping anything that's in the het away from anybody who doesn't engage. He gave us Shabbat and the Moedim as that same type of drawbridge. Yeshua himself being crucified outside the walls of the city is a picture of that drawbridge coming down. So what I'm saying is that there's numerous different ways to plug in. It's almost like every one of these letters is a variable in a mathematical equation. A variable can take on different values depending on the situation, but the equation is a fixed relationship, and physicists and mathematicians figure out the way the universe was built and come up with these equations and going, okay, it's a standard relationship of these pieces, but then the various values of the pieces can change, and so you plug in different values to the letters, to the variables of the equation. The equation doesn't change. The variables change their value, the quantification, or the qualifying, the essence of each letter has to stay the same, but there's some allowance within the identification of the letter. So what I'm saying is that the red heifer sacrifice is a type of Vav Zion. Yeshua being crucified is a Vav Zion. Us actually worshiping as a Vav Zion. Us actually engaging in the communion supper of Pesach, or the church Eucharist thing, or the keeping the Shabbat and the Moedim is a Vav Zion. For Melchizedek to offer Abraham bread and wine to share together is a Vav Zion. To sit down with your friend and have a meal is a Vav Zion. Or to sit around and campfire and talk to each other is a Vav Zion. And there's something about that breaks through the het only by that process of engaging. There's something about being, you might say, vulnerable or real with your spouse, or you with your friend, which is a type of Vav Zion that'll break through into a different zone on the other side of the het. So now to look at what's on the other side of the het is a mystery to all those who have never gone there. But right inside the het is Kaf and Lamed, which we said lines up with the Torah. Well, wait a minute, didn't I say the Hay lined it up with the literature of reading the Torah? There's something about reading the Torah, Hay, and then experience the Torah as Kaf Lamed, the Kaf, the open hand, the lines of instruction that are a gift, which are also a covering. So the word kippah has to do with like the hat, the covering, the open hand is the Kaf, and the Lamed is the shepherd's staff. It's to teach and learn. Kaf is also like lines of furrows in the field. The Lamed is like a hoe to plant the seeds of the Torah. So there's the word kala, Kaf Lamed Hay is bride. Kaf Lamed is all, but it's also to be destroyed, or nothing left. Lamed Kaf, just the two letters this way and that way. There's two letters that are in the middle of the alphabet, means to you, or walk. So walk in the authority as it's written. What I'm saying is that there's something about engaging the Torah on the inside of the het versus engaging the reading of the literature, or the liturgy, or the literary regard of reading some psalms or writings on the outside as a heart wanting, intending, trying to worship. Trying to worship, wanting to worship, going through the process of worshiping events, which is what I was describing as the first 7 letters, is different when you engage the writing of the Torah on the inside for having become in a worshipful state. And that would be both at the Zion, the actuality as a place of I'm doing it, but also then the yod of being in the throes of the experience. It's now this personal experience of indeed engaged with the identity of the one represented by the blue, purple, red, white, the 4 colors on the big white fence of the Mishkan, the embroidery of the priest's garments. So what I'm saying is that to listen to Christian music is one thing. To actually be there, having the worship experience is another thing, but to actually be engaging Yahuwah, his Ruach, as the real event is another thing. And I could even say, gosh, you could go back and say there's 22 phases of engaging, which is basically kind of what we're doing. Each letter could represent a phase of development, not only in life at large or Israel in general, Yeshua in particular, but each man, it's his life story, aleph through tav, but every experience can be aleph through tav, like a wheel within a wheel. That's what I'm saying, is that you can see the Mishkan within every letter. You can see the whole Mishkan pattern within every phase of the Mishkan pattern. You can see every letter as a gamut within every other letter as a whole, and also as an individual. It's just wheel within wheel is the way this whole thing works. So now it throws us into Mem. Well, Mem is this interior, this taking the seed within as being pregnant. It's a picture of envisioning the hope. So part of worship is not just, okay, we're singing a song. There's a couple songs. In Your Presence was one of the Christian songs. Well, that's cool, to be in your presence. What does it mean to be in his presence? If you've accomplished getting in his presence, now you're just standing there in awe. Some of the Christian songs are saying, I'm in awe of you. Some of the songs are in your presence. That's where I long to be. So you're stating that as a hope, but as long as you're singing in your presence, that's where I long to be, you're not there yet. You might be there, and you might be singing that as a way of sustaining. That's what I'm saying. Music works as this interesting vehicle. But once you're there in his presence, you don't need to sing the words, in your presence, that's where I long to be, unless you're there and you're going, yeah, I love it being here. So what I'm saying is that words and music work as like a horse and chariot to get you to a place, but then your own personal experience once you're there. What's it like being on a roller coaster at Disneyland? The roller coaster is the vehicle, but the tracks are the course, but what's the experience? There's something about envisioning or having within you the hope that's described by every one of these letters, the hope that's described by every word of scripture, the hope that's described by every one of the songs is the memming. And then for that mem is like starting this fire, but for the fire to ignite within you. So the word lav is aleph-bet. That's where we get the word English, L-O-V-E. It's the word aleph-bet is the word heart, but it's also where you get the word lava, aleph-bet hey, which is like L-A-V-A, which is like the inflamed molten core of the volcano, which is deep in the volcano, which is expressed as the volcano gives. So you could say a volcano is a picture of love, meaning an inflamed heart that has a pressure to just give of itself from within. So a flaming, erupting volcano is actually a metaphorical picture of love, which is actually what chesed is. Chesed, chet samek dalet, having a heart which expresses tender loving kindness, chesed, giving. Chassid, we'll bump into that word later, chet samek yod dalet is known as pious, or Yahweh calls them chassidi, my kind ones, my pious ones, the ones who have actually taken this to heart and are engaged in the doing of it. So some of this, like I said, outside is theoretical. The first 6 letters is a theoretical process by design: worship, liturgy, Eucharist, adoration, song, giving, prayer, with the objective of transfiguration. But then once you're engaged, Vav Zion, by keeping the things he gave us, having the right aim, having the right yearning, consult the roadmap of the Torah, and then grab a hold of the wrench of Shabbat and the Moedim, and then have the be actually engaged in the doing of it, to break through or break across the moat of separation into the kingdom, into this presence, where we then see all the words of the Torah in a different way. So this whole study of the Torah is a whole different thing than just looking at it at face value. I believe what we're talking about is hearing his voice. It's the same thing, but different. The Kol Yahuwah, Kufav Lamed, hearing his voice. Reading his words and hearing his voice is different than just reading Bible stories or paraphrasing. So memming, going back to mem, envisioning the hope with this heart from deep within that's erupting like a volcano, memming is an act of consideration, contemplation, meditation, which is all lingering or dwelling upon. So it's pondering. So it's just musing. It's the word Haggah, Hey Gimel Hey. David talked about meditating, pondering on the word. There's nothing wrong with doing that. To just sit and think, stare at lay on the ground and stare at the sky, look at the trees, look at the clouds, and just think about stuff. What a great use of time. It gets into psychology, philosophy, and theologo. You might say word of the divine, the God's word, theologo. 3 Greek letters would be psi, psi, and phi, phi, and then the theta. So those 3 letters, and I mentioned Greek just because that's, when you study science and mathematics, they use Greek letters a lot. One Greek letter represents a whole field of thinking. Psychology is a letter shaped like that with a line through the middle. Philosophy would be the circle with the line through the middle, similar to the letter kuf, and then theologo would be a circle with a horizontal line. You'll see this on the paper. But he told us then, as we are memming, to remember and declare. So the act of memming is expressed as noon. So as we're memming, harboring the seed of his word within ourselves, so that the seed will sprout. So a blessed noon restart, a regeneration, a sprouting of the seed. And so as we remember and we declare, as we talked about last week, remembering Zakar. So if all that is Haggah, Hey Gimel Hey, it's the root of the word for Goyim, which is Gimel Vav Yod Mem, which is those who navigate differently. So the word nation doesn't necessarily mean bad, a negative thing. Even Israel is referred to as a goyim, a nation at one point, but aleph mem is also the word for nation. But you could say the way that the different nations have different cultures and different ways of thinking and different languages is what separates the nations. So he gave us his language, his name, his moedim, his principles, his matters, his devarim, as a way of navigating, contemplating, thinking, pondering, and the phonetics of spelling the words with consonants. That's all Hey Gimel Hey. Navigation, steering wheel, helm, rudder. That's all memming in noon. So nooning would be, you might say, the expression. So music being the vehicle to teleport into a different dimension, you could say that's where music kicks in as being its valuable. What does it do? It notes rhythm, juxtaposition in time, tone. It creates a feeling. It creates an emotion. If you're a good musician, you could put certain notes together, a certain rhythm or beat, And people automatically have a certain feeling. That's just the way music works. It brings a whole different dimension in. So you can have a thought, okay, but you can put the thought to music, or you could put the thought to poetry, and it'll pick you up and carry you somewhere different than just a thought. If we're writing some music as worship and say, I mean, think of this song, "Oh Lord my God." When I sit and think, using an old Christian standard song, think about it this way: "Oh Lord my God, oh Yahuwah, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder." It just does something differently. I said it that way because we've all heard, a lot of people haven't maybe, "Oh Lord my God," but the same phrasing, just plug in his name. He told us he was Yahuwah. "Oh Yahuwah, when I in solemn wonder." It's like the phrasing of the music takes you to the place you're trying to go. Music is an incredible thing. Sing. And to say the words, "Consider all the worlds thy hands have made." There's something about just saying the words, "I'm considering all the worlds your hand have made." There was a song we put on just yesterday. I wrote it down somewhere. I'll find it. "All Creation Sings" by Karen Davis. There's a video. "All Creation Sings." Look it up. You maybe put a link to it. And at the moment that my wife put that up, we were just listening to it there, and seeing the pictures that somebody put on the video of bugs and different animals and fish and flowers, and synchronized with the lyrics of that song, grabs you and takes you to a place of appreciation. Look at that design of that animal that Yahuwah designed and built. And in its stature, it fills its element. And then at the pinnacle of all that creation, he made humans, you. Now, here. Everything else, the beauty, the wonder, the depth, was all to create the stage for you to have this earthly experience. And then the pinnacle experience of all your life is that in the midst of the trouble, the pain, the trauma, or the joy, the appreciation, the depth of comprehending and being distinctly aware, the Zion Yod of your own experience, to lift up and give him recognition. Pinnacle of your reason for existing, which is exactly what Paul Bari was expressing. Karen Davis, I don't agree with some of the words she used, but nevertheless, the point is, if you can get, not just listen to the song as a song, but get into the heart of what she was expressing and use the words as a Merkabah, a chariot, a horse and chariot, to take you, launch you into your own personal experience, that's the worship. That's nooning. Give it a try. Listen to her thing, her song. And then it asks the question, what do we need? Why are we worshiping? We need to engage his presence. We need to connect. That's what we're need. And so there was a video that somebody sent me, Kurt, I sent you, and it's like, gosh, other people are having all kinds of experiences these days. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but they're going up to heaven and back and having all kinds of seeing Enoch and talking to him and other angels and Jesus and this and that. And it's like, gosh, I can't even account for what some people are saying they're experiencing these days. We're going to see that in a minute in Isaiah 50. But the question about worship is, why are we doing this? What do we need? We need to connect with him. That's why we come to the door. We come to the apex of the triangle of the dalet to engage him at the apex of his dalet, the hourglass. We're trying to get to that door, that threshold, and get through it or get to it. And there stands Yeshua at that door. But what does he need? Why did he send Yeshua? Why is he coming down to meet us? What does he want? Well, if as the moon reflects the sun, as the wife reflects the husband, if we are made in his image, reflecting him, then we could even look at ourselves and say, somehow we can see him. If we look at ourselves, if we're made in his image, our needs are somehow a picture of his. He needs. Why did he make humans? Why did he make the universe? He meaning Ehyeh, Yahuwah, the self-contained, self-sufficient, lacking nothing. Did he lack something? It's a Christian concept, a Christian catechism, that what he wants is our attention, our relationship, our appreciation. So then worship is an expression of saying, we recognize you, we are reaching towards you, we appreciate you, we acknowledge you, and from there, you're going to have to take a hold of our hand and take us to where you want us to go, because all we can do is reach up, but with a pure heart, a full heart, an honest heart. That's the aleph. From within, and then holding the hand of one next to us, the corporately. That's the bet. And then so we're going through these motions as trying to reach you, Yahuwah. Worship, liturgy, Eucharist, adoration, song, giving, prayer, even giving. Again, it's not just about money, it's giving of time, giving of attention, giving of heart, giving of help, food, helping the widows and orphans and the ones that are less fortunate. Servicemen, people who are just crippled mentally, if not physiologically, with disease, whatever it might be. I'm just saying giving is a whole thing. So anyway, going back to if noon, this expression in music, sets us up for the next series of letters, Samic, Ayin, Pei. Samic, that's an engineered structure. We could say that that's doctrine. It's an organized expression. But the menorah, like this model behind me, there's a center, there's Yeshua, the vine, and we're the branches. So there's the diversification, this side and that side. Hey, well, there's the Jews and the Christians. Well, there's the this side of the family, that side of the family, this side of the world, that side of the world, Western, Eastern. It's like, boy, there's this dynamic, this bifurcation, diversification, and literally the word spelled Samic Ayin with a noon in front of it. So noon Samic Ayin literally means to spread a wing, and diversification, like the word manifold, which is like on your engine where you have a manifold where each one of the cylinders has a pipe coming out of it, and then it's collected and taken as exhaust, or incoming manifold, the fuel coming in and it's plugged into each one of the cylinders. So just like the picture of the menorah, to have each one of these different cylinders and an engine is exactly the word Nun Samic Ayin, or even just Samic Ayin, to go out, to pick up and go on an expedition and to be diversified, which is what's happened over the years. The 12 tribes is the diversification of the house of Israel. The 50 states of the United States, the various republics that joined together in the Soviet Union, which is defunct. It doesn't exist anymore. But the point is, the whole idea of confederated tribes coming back together and diversifying is both a picture, intake manifold, exhaust manifold, of somic ion. But if physics of frequency and resonance, cellular vibration is an organized structure, so Yahuwah built into the universe certain physics, ion, thoughts lining up with if somic is like this fourth dimension, a change in time. There's 3 dimensions of a playing field, fourth dimension being time, fifth dimension, the unseen realm of the occult, meaning not the bad guys, the demons, but also the angelic realm. There's this other unseen realm. Ocular has to do, occult means unseen by the eye, not necessarily good or bad, but engaging both, or who knows what it engages if it's unseen. Another dimension, a 6th dimension, would be the pay. If somic ion pay, if we looked at it as being different dimensions of things, we could say, well, there's an organized structure, there's thoughts, there's words, and they all affect vibration. Zadi, I could plug that in and say that's sustaining the culture. He gave us ceremony and festival to sustain the culture. So all this is about the culture. This is what's inside the Het. The Torah, having a heart for his stuff, not like the bitter complaining on the outside of the fence, the grumbling, the murmuring, the arguments, the disagreements, the contending, all on the outside of the fence. Inside the fence, in the presence of his Ruach, appreciating his voice of his Torah, envisioning the hope, having a heart, expressing in music, expressing or it being conformed with the engineered structure of the physics of, that's why people who are trying to appreciate Yahuwah and what he made, that's why they are into such things as the solfeggio tones and essential oils and speaking right words and wearing the right clothing and eating the right food, is because they're trying to play into his physics. And a lot of believers think that that's woo-woo, new age nonsense. I disagree. It's not new age nonsense. New agers who happen to also have a heart for the same thing have an appreciation for the same thing, but in no way it's nonsense. It's a huge significance, wherein is a sprout, the picture of the Zadi. So the physics have an effect, but doing it not just as a matter of physics, but because of the identity of Yahuwah and the culture of the kingdom is the Zadi. And because of that sprout, now remember, here's the thing, it's a matter of the identity of Yahweh. He says, Psalms 50 and Isaiah 50 talk about, it's not about sacrifice, it's not about the festivals, it's not really about the Shabbat, it's not about the pretense of you pretending like you're worshiping. He's not interested in that. It's about the reality, who he is, and his relationship with humans, individually and corporately. If you go through the motions, that's almost like trying to kickstart your car or push start your car. Back in the old days when there was a manual transmission, if your battery was dead, you could push your car, hopefully downhill and not uphill. I've tried that. It's pretty tough. You push it and it builds up a compression and it'll automatically get it firing, and you could get a car going. You can't do that with electronic ignitions nowadays. But so sometimes you go through the act, the form, the pretense of worship, hoping to get yourself into the worship mind. Seldom does it work. It might work. If you keep Shabbat, Eucharist, Moedim, hands on the wrench, does that make it work? Hopefully, maybe not. All this stuff is a personal experience process. But when it works, so I'm saying that there's an actuality of a picture of Zion, an actuality in the throes of experience at the Yos. There's another actuality with nooning. There's this thing happens because it's a matter of physics, and what was the word planted in your heart, memming, sprouted as the noon. But then there's this Zadi where suddenly the culture is happening, which is a picture of the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, which is the hope set before us, like a picture of the Ark of the Covenant, the hope set before us, where the kingdom is restored. The 12 tribes are regathered. Yeshua's out of the grave. we're actually living into that moment where he says, I'm going to be your Elohim and you'll be my people. That's the kuf experience, the otherness. The promise is realized. The affect has its effect. The future is now. The kaf lamed serves to provide the resh people their reality, their operational status, full potential. And the fact that it will happen, not just pie in the sky, hope in the, is because this is the alphabetic sequence. So the resh, being and doing, which was always intended, desired, and envisioned, is a picture of the bet, guarding and doing, personal and corporate. So this whole thing is to get us corporately and individually to that resh status. That's the objective of worship, which is where he wants us to be as well. Sheen, then teeth, fire, it's this turbo afterburner where El Shaddai kicks in this whole other dimension where, and that's typified by Yahweh saying, when you guys act like big stupid jerks and rebel against my words, you're going to bring all kind of ruin. And then I'm going to also call in your enemies. And then also I'm going to shove you into the pit. So him adding to beyond the physics is what that's a picture of. But at the same time, he says, not only will, if you keep walking my ways and listen to my voice and do what I say and guard what I said to guard and sit down on Shabbat like I told you to, if you do those things, not only will it have its natural effect, which is life, but it'll all start growing and your enemies will be abated and the natural physics will take over and do what they're designed to do. But besides that, he's going to kick in. That's the turbocharger of him being the Sheen. And so when you have like some great hymns, oh Lord, hear our prayer. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir was singing that phrase in Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. And we can have all the great choirs and we can have all the great heart and all the great sentiment, but if we have the Elohim Akrim, if we have the wrong God, if we're not listening to his voice, even cathedrals built by stout-hearted men that took 500 years to build, he can't hear our prayer if we don't listen to his voice. To what he said. He said, when you listen to my voice with all your heart and all your soul. So it's said that we're supposed to be kings and priests, or is it supposed to be that we're supposed to be a kingdom of priests? What's a priest? Kaf He Nun. Kaf Nun is ken, which is the word yes, so, thus. Kaf He, very similar. Truly, He Nun, behold gladly. So the word Kaf He Nun is like this, point to the truth gladly. That's what a priest is supposed to be. Here's the truth, appreciate it and walk in it. Here's who Yahweh really is, the one who's expressed in these 22 letters. And here what I've tried to show you going through this is that all 22 letters can be read as a map of worship, where we are, what we intend, how we get there, and what the upshot of it is. The upshot is on the other side of the noon. As we've seen before in the alphabetic letter pattern, Aleph bringing us to Mem is at a certain depth, and then the upshot is nooning out the other side and ascending up into this expression of Zadi Kuf Resh Shin. Okay, I was going to get into Psalm 50, but we'll open this up. Does anybody else want to have anything that you want to add or thoughts or musings on the matter of the worshiping through the aleph-bet? Hey, Mark.
Hi. Listen, one of the perfect examples of what you're talking about worshiping is, if you recall, when they went to get the ark, David went to get the ark, and they're coming back and they're singing and dancing and praising Yahweh, taking a few steps, stopping and singing and dancing. And what happens? The guy, the cart stops and the ark tips over, and Uzziah touches the ark and he dies right there. So all these people that were following David, they were praising and worshiping Yahweh, but not in the manner that he wanted, right? That's exactly what Christianity and lots of other things are doing. It's not that they don't love him. It's just that they're doing it the wrong way. He set out the way that he wants to be worshiped. And it's pretty simple. Worship to me is obey and do. If you're not obeying and doing, you're not really worshiping. So how do I obey and do? Study the darn word. He tells you what it does.
Right.
Right?
If you don't read his words and know what he wants, you're going to worship an Elohim Achrim, not even intending to.
So even a person who was after Yahweh's own heart, David, was doing it wrong, thinking he was doing it correctly. Right? And the Father says, you're not doing it with the manner that I told you. Nobody's supposed to touch it except the priests. But he thought differently, because he was, hey, I'm going to do what Yahweh wants me to do. I'm going to go get the ark. He goes against it, and the guy dies. Even though they were singing and dancing and praising Yahweh. So
Paul's raising his hand.
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't know if you want to call me crusty or not, but
I kind of want to call you Santa Claus,
but just before I did the video, I put I don't you go back to you see from the Vav man to the Resh man. So what I was trying to do when singing that was singing it with in between the Vav and the Resh man. So it was I wanted to bring temple worship to Yahuwah. You know, I just wanted to do it as right as I could with what I know. So if it was wrong, it was wrong. Like, you know, like Mark says, you just touch that tabernacle, boom, you're gone. So it wasn't without, because I'd just been sitting there musing Torah for about an hour and a half before I got done. That sat in the backyard, and you know these inspiration of old songs come in your heart, and you know the name. You just want to sing to him. You know, David tells us to sing to him. So what are we going to sing? This is the thing. You know, this is what was actually created the video. But I want to just say there's some workmates, especially the guy Santa Claus. He messaged me afterwards, and he just said, "Paul, I'm not a religious man. I don't know how to pray. But you, if I need to know, I'm coming to you." Was more or less the essence of his message. He needs to go to Yahoo, I know, but it worked. You know, it touched people that I work with. There's people on there, just non-Christians, that are seeing something. They're reading me, and may I? Well, Sugar, I don't want to be anything in there. I just want them to see Yahuwah. That's the truth, you know. We are letters. We are letters. I don't know which one I am. Just one letter, you know. But read, and by all men. So that was the purpose, really, of the video.
So
I was hoping to.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was
That
just
was
going to say, if you want a letter for yourself, look up what the Hebrew word is for beard, because you got a fantastic beard, and use that letter. That's the first letter of that word.
Wow. Tell me, Mark. I mean,
Bearded one. It starts with a Zion. What is the word? Or is it?
that's great. I like the Zion.
I can't remember what it just means. Bearded one.
No.
Zion Kof, or no, not Zion Kof. Zion. Can't remember. Anyway, you can look it up. Look through all the Zions, you'll find it. What I was going to say, Paul, is that I was actually working on this study of worship before I saw your video. That just played into it and kind of was a resonating confirmation, which is why I decided to discuss it here.
I'll
Well,
post a copy of the video. So, hey, I just want to draw an analogy here. So, if anybody's into fitness, like when you go to the gym, you separate your days. Like Monday may be chest and triceps, and then back and biceps the next day on Tuesday, and then Wednesday you'll do like legs and shoulders. That's the thing. So when you're doing the aleph-bet, this may not. So this guy Omega brought this up also on our page. That Eric's conclusion is that the aleph-bet is the end-all, be-all. This just got to be one part of your study, but included in your study. If you're going to, it's just like fitness. You know, if you're going to work your body, you got to separate the days. It's just one more thing to add to your study. And it may be the thing that you don't like. Nobody likes leg day, so they kind of skip it, but don't skip it. You know, maybe it's something you love, which is chest day. Everybody loves chest day, so do it. But include it in your study, because it's just the revelation you get in scripture from the Hebrew is just Whether you're reading it frontwards or backwards, it's huge. So that's all. Just want to encourage people. It's not the end all be all. Like, why are we doing this? But it's just one more thing to add to your study. It rounds out everything.
Well, it's also the end all be all. But besides that,
and Paul, the word is zaken.
yeah.
Okay, Zion,
Noon.
Zion, Kuf, Noon. But if you just change the noon for to a resh, then you have zakar, which means to speak and act on behalf of. So there you go. Your beard speaks and can act on behalf of what your heart is telling people. There you go.
Do you know? When I was walking home from work really late, and I was all Christian, I just said, "Father, give me the innocency of my salvation back, because Christianity just wasn't working for me." In all my bigness, I said, "Just give me one thing to obey." And I heard in my Christian ruach, "Grow a beard and don't cut it." And I did it for 14 months. He never said to stop, but I'd stopped. So I just thought I'd go back to obeying and grow it again. So that's simple love, for Yahuwah. There you go.
So before we go on, I have a question here from one of the viewers, and I don't know how to answer it, Eric. I think you've addressed it before. I know you have, but I don't know.
Okay.
Let me get to it first. So do you know what resource people use to know what word in Greek correlated to the Hebrew word that was translated in the Septuagint? When I'm reading the New Testament, I want to know what word on Hebrew that would have correlated to, and it isn't in the concordance I have. But I see people talking about a Greek word and what it would have correlated to in Hebrew. I am supposing they know because the words were translated in the Septuagint, so I'm just curious if you know where to find the information.
Okay, so let me just say this about what I understand, that I have not gone to Bible college or seminary, so I don't know what they're teaching, but I have heard that there are 30,000 different fragments of Greek documents, scriptures, no two of which match identical word for word and letter for letter. Now, if that's true, which one is the authorized Greek that you can get the authorized English out of? I kind of made a joke of it before, saying it would have been more difficult of a task for the Holy Spirit to make sure that there were no two copies that matched, rather than have a few match so we knew, oh, that's the one. To have every single one of 30,000 Greek manuscripts not match, that's a bit of a job. So which is the authorized Greek word? I don't know.
Then I guess the question is, how do you get to the Hebrew from the Greek then?
Okay, so what I'm saying is that the original Hebrew was made into Septuagint in about 285 BC, 285 by Ptolemy II. That was after Alexander the Great, who was around 350 BC. So after Alexander the Great, his kingdom was divided into four. So you got Antiochus and Seleucid and Ptolemy, and I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, then it branched out. Okay, so for us to go back and say, you can look in, now that nowadays there's computers, you can do it, but is it the right word, the best word? I don't know. And so even what I have up on the internet, there's a guy in the late 1800s that translated back into Hebrew the New Testament, and that's the version we have. And I keep forgetting to write down the guy's name. We'll do that soon. But I can't authorize that even the Paleo version of the New Testament that we have online is exactly the right word. But what I keep trying to say is, if you know the 22 letters, it almost doesn't matter, because the message has to be the same in the Mishkan pattern. In the aleph, well, you go to reduction, the aleph taving, the aleph becoming tav, expressed in the Mishkan pattern, expressed in the 22 letters, expressed in the Hebrew, then permutations expressed in every other language, including Greek, Latin, and English. it goes back to what's the aleph tav? What's the real essence? What's who is he? So I'm not making too big of a deal out of whether we have the exact right Greek word. And I've heard people say sometimes, giving you different meanings of Greek, that's what pastors like to do. And it's like, it's a different game that I'm not involved in. But the internet, now you're subject to whoever put the program together, but the internet is the best resource. Interlinear will show you oftentimes keyed, like Green's interlinear, keyed to Strong's Concordance, but I disagree with some of what Strong's Concordance says is the meaning of a word. So you get different lexicons and dictionaries and concordances, and who am I to say I know better? Brown Driver Briggs is pretty good, but that's for Hebrew. But it's like, I'm not saying I know better. I'm just using the Mishkan pattern as the you might say the index by which to give value to each one of the letters, by which then to determine the meaning of the words. It's a mechanism, it's a tool, it's an index, it's a graph by which to calibrate the essence of each letter, by then to plug into the spelling of words to determine what does that word mean. And then the means of looking at these different words. For example, we'll get to Psalms 50, talking about that, coming right out of the first verse, pulling into the 14th verse. It has to do with the very thing we're talking about, which is why we spent this whole time talking about the heart of worship. But anyway, I don't know if that addressed it, or is there anything else you want to say about that before we get into Psalm 50? Or does anybody else who's on the call have anything you want to add to the discussion before we get into Psalm 50?
Julie, did we adequately address that? You can put it on the screen too if you can't talk.
Julie or Sally or anybody else who's Greg or?
No, thank you. I think you helped me. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, awesome. I prefer to just study the letters in Paleo and use the Red Dictionary, and cross-reference with what is available in the Tanakh, the Stone's Tanakh, in the English translation. But really, that's just kind of like a buoy system, as you have explained eloquently before, Eric, where English is like the buoy system, and you kind of out in the sea got a buoy out there. Okay, go into the Hebrew, and that's where you can get into the depth of trying to have understanding of what's there. And I prefer the Paleo study and the Red Dictionary. That's all.
But to be able to use like a translation that's available even for, well, if we're talking about the New Testament, Brit Hadashah, Eric and I Eric and I ran into this before, where we were teaching on it was Matthew, I think, and the Paleo Hebrew that's online on the Erectology website, it's out of sync. It's not, because we tried using the what was that Aramaic version that's available, and it didn't line up for some reason. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to address that pretty soon. I haven't had time to be able to get into that, but that's slated for an attention.
So if people are using the Erectology scriptures online, the whole New Testament's out of sync, just so you know.
Out of sync meaning chapter and verse?
It just doesn't line up. It doesn't, if you're comparing, there's only one way to compare it right now is to the Aramaic, that Aramaic scripture that I know of anyway, it's either that or English, and it's not lining up with the Aramaic.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at that. So apologize for any trouble or inconvenience, but I'll try to address that this year, but I can't do it right now.
Can't do it right this second. You can't stop everything you're doing and go handle that right now.
Anyway, Julie, did you have something that you wanted to say? There was a circle around your initials there. No? Okay. Should we get into Psalms 50?
Let me stop and start again.